Hi everybody, it's me GhostCritic. Friday is upon us, so it's time for me to let you know what I thought about the comic books that I picked up on Wednesday. And with 11 books to get through, we better get on with it. I'm going to start with the most disappointing book of the week. It was a number one, and surprisingly it came from Image. It was The Humans. Now, I have a feeling that this book is going to polarise a lot of people in the comic book community. And I have to say, I was so off the mark on Wednesday's pull list video about what I thought this comic book was going to be. I was hoping, I guess, for a kind of future apocalyptic world where, you know, this kind of Planet of the Apes-esque type story. But no, we are firmly in 1970s Bakersfield. And I think that's what the big problem for me and maybe a lot of other people will have about this book is that the writers are relying on the reader to just take it on face value that we are in a universe which is clearly very much like our own, but instead of normal humans, the humans are apes of all, you know, primates of all different various breeds. And there is no explanation about this. Is this kind of like an alternative universe? So I kind of had to try and get my head around that to begin with. What is the point of replacing, you know, regular humans, characters, and putting apes in their place? I think what the kind of writers are kind of trying to do is, and pardon the pun here, they're kind of trying to ape the kind of underground indie comics of the kind of late 60s, early 70s, like your P-Cars, your Robert Crumbs, the kind of Furry Freak Brothers type of underground comics that were popular, I guess, around that time. But it's hard to kind of, again, grasp that when you're holding on to a quite kind of glossy, matte, corporate finished item in this comic book. The actual storyline as well, there isn't a great deal going on. You have this biker gang called the Humans, and they are sending off one of their kind of clan who has died, and there's this kind of a biker funeral for them, which contains lots of drug taking, sex, rock and roll, all the things bad that biker boys do. They come across, or they have a confrontation with a rival biker gang called the Scabs, and it's just a huge fight there, and we get this mysterious figure at the end who we don't know who it is, clearly has some huge importance. They are coming back. I don't know, it suffice to say, I'm not picking up issue 2. There was nothing here that grabbed me, that I felt was exciting enough. It just felt very... The artwork is kind of good. There are some fantastic kind of double page splashes which are fun to look at. But apart from that, there's not much of worth really in the Humans, I'm afraid. Don't really get this kind of negative about a comic. I can usually find something, and there's something is just almost the art. I'm sure a lot will be said about the kind of exploitation of women in this title. Now, I'm not saying this is a historical kind of portrayal of the 70s, but it is set in the 70s. The kind of depiction of women kind of throughout the 70s is pretty low. Fortunately, we have progressed since then, but you're going to pick up a comic about the 1970s, you're going to get a 1970s depiction of the characters. I mean, you can see it, there's a back cover, you can see on there the kind of exploitation of women quite firmly shown, really. So, can you really complain about that? Can you really be offended by it? I'm sure you can, but whether you should be or not is another question. Batman Detective Comics issue 36 suffers from the two-part story syndrome, the curse. Last issue of Terminal, we have a eco-terrorist, we have a plane full of dead people, a deadly virus with an 8-hour incubation period, and Batman's been infected. And this issue has to somehow wrap that all up before the book ends. So we have a lot of kind of convenient plot devices and contrivances. Batman has to draw in the help of Grayson. He's over there in Minsk, in Moscow somewhere. And he just happens to be torturing a prisoner who has information that can link Magnus, the eco-terrorist, to his girlfriend, I guess he's been seeing. That girlfriend just happens to also be in Minsk, running a kind of discotheque. She conveniently gives Grayson the information that he requires through just a simple kiss. I swear Grayson isn't that good. And Magnus just happens to be in the plane for Batman to knock out, take his blood, and I guess make an antidote and cure everyone. It's very substandard storytelling. This video isn't starting off very well, is it? The saving grace for this book is Jean Paul Leon and Dave Stewart's artwork in here. It is stunning, it's dark, it's brooding, but at the same time it's incredibly detailed in parts. But the story just, it wasn't worth it. Moving on to 10 Grand issue 11, finally a release. We've had a bit of a break again from this book. No sad loss really, because it hasn't been as great as it started. I've always said the lack of Temple Smith art in this title really made this title suffer to this C.P. Smith, who has his own style. I don't think it really suits the book, but I've kind of held on with this because the storyline has actually been quite interesting and captivating. Unfortunately, in this issue, we have what is called the explanation syndrome. We're coming to the end of this story arc, this title. I'll talk about that just nearer the end of this, but we kick off the issue with Joe kind of reminiscing in some respects about what he wanted to do with his girlfriend Laura, and all the kind of romantic, magical kind of holidaying adventures that he wanted to take her on, but due to her being murdered, these were never going to happen. I have a little problem, and it's only just really occurred to me now. Joe was originally just kind of like this mob enforcer, and he was going to do that infamous one last job, then go straight and, you know, take his girlfriend all over the world. And obviously, you know, he's devastated because his girlfriend gets murdered. But the transition from being just a mob enforcer to this kind of John Constantine wannabe, how did that happen? I don't know whether that's, I can't remember because it's been so long, how that really all came about. Who knows, maybe in further issues they may pick up on this, but I doubt it. However, the rest of the issue, we kind of have this explanation about how Joe realised what heaven was up to. The demons and angels are currently all fighting each other in hell. Joe is explaining to this one angel all the clues that he picked up along the way to come to where he is now, and knowing that this was all a setup from the very beginning. It's very much like watching an episode of Poirot, you know, the end scene where he says, "It was you and I'll tell you how you did it." It's that kind of setup. Fortunately, it doesn't take too long to get round all that, and we do kind of get smatterings of Ben Temple-Smith artwork. It's kind of reproduced from earlier issues, but it's still nice to see him in the mix. And then, of course, there is the smackdown between Joe and the guy who killed his girlfriend. Clearly from the cover, he doesn't come off too well from it. It's been interesting. I thought this was all wrapping up next issue. In the back, it does say that this is kind of the end of the first story arc, and next issue they are introducing a new artist, a guy called Matthew Don Smith. Not a name I kind of really know, it doesn't ring any bells, but new artist. I may just stay on this book now if it is going to continue on, and see if he has a better style and a better handle on how kind of our Joe Fitzgerald kind of Constantine anti-hero type guy should look. So it's not much to recommend, but still I've enjoyed it for when it's come out, if not the artwork. With Swamp Thing issue 36, I felt it very much a kind of setup issue, and it kind of got me wondering about Charles Soule and the kind of swampy legacy he's going to leave behind when he eventually leaves DC for his exclusive Marvel contract. And yes, he's kind of introduced all these kind of new avatars. It's no longer just about the red, the green and the rot. And this issue kind of fleshes out a lot, kind of so to speak, about the machines. And it kicks off with a kind of huge battle royale between Swamp Thing and the machines, where quite rightly so, Swamp Thing trounces them and they scurry back off to their kind of underwater Arctic headquarters. And it is here that, for one, we learn that the avatars don't actually, sorry, not the avatars, the machines don't actually have an avatar. So kind of like, obviously the green has Alec Holland and the Swamp Thing, the rot now has kind of Abby. But because the machines are kind of want to be in such control of their kind of part of the universe, that giving the power and the control over to just one person is unthinkable to them. But they kind of come to this kind of logical conclusion that the fight that they just had with Swamp Thing was only lost, it seems, because the green does have an avatar. It does have this human host. The machines are the only kind of entity that don't have an avatar, don't have a human host. So there is this fantastic kind of two-page spread of them trying to pick a candidate out of current DC characters, which was really fun. But obviously they look at them all and they realise all the failings and why they can't be used. But there is a character who has shown up quite recently in this very title that would be a prime candidate, who is not happy with Swamp Thing in the slightest, who tried to bring him down but failed. And I'm going to spoil it for you. Read it, see the last page, you'll know who I mean. It will be sad to see Charles Soule leave this title. He's given this kind of... He's given it back its... Oh, I'm all with puns this week. It's brought it back to its kind of Vertigo roots. And it gave it that feel and the environment that I remembered from... And I won't kind of say it's anywhere near Alan Moore's run, but it gave it that feel that Alan Moore was providing back in kind of the saga of the Swamp Thing. So it'll be sad when he goes. Be interested to know who the new creative team will be on this and where they will push the title to. Now, Spread issue 4. Now, I don't want to say this is my kind of guilty pleasure, because I'm never guilty about picking up any of my comic books, but this is a very kind of no brain required reading material. And in some respects, that's kind of a shame. The current story here is obviously we're in this outpost. People are trying to keep the Spread out from it. At the end of last issue, Ravello, a kind of neighbouring outpost, the kind of long blonde-haired guy who's running it, he did seem to come with what looked like a huge army to this outpost. But at the start of this, it looks like he's brought maybe like a gang of 12 or so. So the kind of threat from the last issue is somewhat muted here. There wasn't that huge menace and supposed or assumption that there was going to be some annihilation of this outpost from Ravello. Ravello is here purely, I guess, for taking revenge on No for killing his men. Seems a bit over the top, but anyway, here we are. And we have a kind of standoff between Ravello and No. We've always seen No as a very capable and handy guy with any kind of weapons and the like. But he has met his match here and is almost being sent for execution when our kind of creepy... He has been on the edge of the kind of scenes for a while, but the menace has been there. We're talking about this kind of preacher guy. He manages to infiltrate Spread into the outpost. Molly gets even crazier, looking after the baby and trying to keep away from kind of lecherous guys and the like. So kind of all our kind of main characters are in danger by the end of this issue. It's a fun kind of sci-fi post-apocalyptic horror comic. What I'd like to see more of is kind of the origins of this Spread. I don't want it to just become this entity that is there and it's just a series of adventures, for want of a better word, where people try and outrun it. I'd like to know where it's come from, where it all began, its origin, and get a little bit more of a backstory to it. Maybe we'll get that in the future. Not for the faint-hearted. There's lots of blood, there's lots of guts, but it's hugely enjoyable if you like that kind of thing. Batman Eternal issue 31, and I kind of guessed right. It was Alfred on the cover with this unlikely kind of team up with Bane. We'll get more onto that a little bit later. But with Arkham Asylum having collapsed into the ground, we have our Batman Rogues gallery of villains trying to escape. We get a few nice touches seeing Clayface, Mr. Freeze and Zaz, which Batman quickly take down before they can escape any further and cause more mischief than is already currently going on around Gotham. The Joker's daughter bomb threat thing was all a fake. How tedious. She just had plasticine wrapped around her. But this does kind of still make Batman think that he's being pushed in certain kind of directions, and he's merely a puppet for this mastermind behind everything. I'm still unsure here whether Hush is truly the big mastermind between all this, or if he is just another kind of puppet being played like Roman was. So the big thing about this issue was clearly this team up of sorts between Alfred and Bane, and the interesting part of it is kind of their gradual role reversal as they make their way and get out of Arkham Asylum. Bane being the big kind of villain taking charge, wanting Alfred to stay behind him. Bane seeing himself as superior to Alfred. But as you gradually go through the issue, as they're gradually making their way through the catacombs and the secret tunnels as such, you see this role reversal where Alfred starts taking much more of a lead. He starts taking charge, telling Bane where he should be going, and eventually leading him to a bat hideout, where he can eventually take down Bane with some convenient, I will grant you that, knockout gas. The only part that kind of stuck in me craw, I guess, was the spoiler part, and her kind of virtually crashing into, I guess, Hush. We all know, because we've seen the end of this, that Spoiler isn't clearly going to die here, because she will be used, as we saw in Batman, whatever issue it was, Scott Snyder's little interlude where we saw kind of the future after Batman Eternal. So we know she's alive, nothing horrendous is going to happen here, but what is the reason for these two coming together, we will eventually see. It was an okay issue. I enjoyed it. It wasn't right up there. There wasn't this, I've kind of sneaked a peek at other people talking about it, and while they didn't say too much about it, they found a lot in this. I haven't seen Bat Josh's yet, but I will be checking that in. But there's been a few people who found this very kind of emotive, and I just didn't see a lot of that. There was some clever storytelling with the Bane and Alfred, but apart from that, an average as we are going into the halfway point of Batman Eternal. Issue 2 of Fiction Squad manages to give me the same feeling as the previous first issue, where we have this kind of clever storytelling from Paul Jenkins surrounding the kind of nursery rhymes and fairy tale children's story characters from our childhood, and it's all fun. It's just really kind of magical in a way, but in a kind of twisted way, because we have them acting like, you know, adults. Humpty Dumpty is being framed for the murder of one of the witches, and this allows Frankie, our detective, to follow up some leads in order to kind of claim back his innocence, and he gets to meet all manner of kind of fairy tale story characters. So we've got like the Jack of Hearts, who ate those tarts, winged monkeys, Dorothy, some munchkins, and finally it is the turn of the witches to fight back, and a huge tornado scurries through a Rhineland. It's just a lot of fun. Paul Jenkins is doing a great job on this fairy tale style storytelling, and again, I really like Raymond Bach's artwork. I know it's not for everyone. It is very cartoony. He does draw his women rather well endowed, but it's fun. It shouldn't be taken too seriously. Just give it a try. Have fun with your comics. Birthright issue 2, and I had such fun with issue 1 that I had to at least try the next issue, and in some respects it certainly didn't disappoint. We now obviously know, for those of you who have read the first issue, that our kind of grown-up Mikey might not be all what he seems. He seems to be manipulated by some evil entity that only he can hear. And it's this issue where we kind of get a little bit more backstory about where Mikey has been, as he tells his older brother Brennan to kind of help him escape or get him out of this police station. It's very difficult to know whether to trust this kind of grown-up Mikey and the story he's telling us, given that we do know he is being manipulated. But I am enjoying this kind of mix of kind of fantasy characters mixed in with humans. And Image seem to be really pushing forward their kind of fantasy titles, as we'll see a little bit later on. I think you all know which title I'm talking about, but for now it's Birthright. So we get some of his childhood kind of learning how to use kind of swords and knives and being introduced to this world of Terranos. And as I said, it's just hard to know whether to believe the stories we are being told, and that's one of the interesting parts of this book, that we have such an untrustworthy character giving us this information about where he's been. For all we know, this kind of manipulating thing could be just his imagination. He could just be going a bit cuckoo, and this is totally not Mikey. It's got nothing to do with him, although he does know things that he could only know if he was Mikey from his youth, with his brother being pushed down the stairs, getting a scar on his face. Yeah, it was fun. I'm going to pick up the next one. I'm going to give this a good old try and see where this progresses to. Clearly this evil entity wants to make it onto Earth, but for what purpose? Who knows? We're going to find out. Williamson, let us know sooner than later. The Woods issue number 7, and James Tynion continues to use this storytelling device of the flashback to this one night. This is all centering on just one character per time, but in this way I think it does really work. I know that Morning Glories uses this, but it is so confusing trying to keep along with the timelines and where we all are with the characters, that it's nice that the Woods use this device purely just for one night, and it obviously has a great deal of significance, perhaps, I guess, to what has happened here. We focus on our cover star here. It's Ben, and he is secretly in love with someone, and he can't tell that person. He can't tell his dad. He can't tell his fake girlfriend. But what is great about these flashbacks and then where they are now on this planet is we see a progression of character. In the flashbacks, Ben is kind of a very meek young boy who is just kind of discovering himself and who he likes and coming to terms with that and how he is going to tell his father and his friends. And then we see him taking the lead on this planet to save one of his group, and he becomes this kind of strong, independent character, which is really great to see. There is also, of course, the woods seem to have been coming alive in the last issue. Everything is scared. All these demons are coming out of everywhere. All our groups, wherever they are all in danger. And then I forget his name, and it wasn't anywhere in this issue, but the spooky guy that seems to know a lot more of what's going on than he should do, the one with the glasses, he starts speaking in tongues. He starts speaking in an alien language, and we find out that this planet could actually potentially just be a weapon and is wanting to be wielded. Our kind of Lord of the Rings type characters from the other group kind of hint at the fact that because kind of our young guy has used this power of the planet, he has to be taken down or it will be the death of all of them. Exciting stuff. The colouring on this is fantastic. It's very bright and in your face, very colourful. I love this. I'm so glad I've got into Boom Studios Publishing. They're bringing out some really interesting and fun titles. Night World, yes, it's come to an end, at least for this 4-issue miniseries. It has been said in the back that they will be back with more kind of mini-series, more characters, more stories to tell within this Night World universe, and for that I am so happy. This book has just been filled with this kind of 70s Kirby psychedelic vibe that while you're reading it you just can't help but smile all the way through. In this issue, funnily enough, with it being the last one of the mini-series, we get the origin of Plenilunio, how he became this kind of gothic, dark, almost Dracula-like character, and how he lost the love of his life. But it just, from start to finish, this comic has just always felt right, and it didn't matter how out there or ridiculous it felt, it still felt right. I'm gonna miss it, and looks like I'm gonna have to wait until at least kind of February, March time for some new installments. I'm certainly going to be going back and rereading this mini-series before the new ones come around. Hopefully this will be picked up maybe in a trade. If it's not, go and hunt out these single issues because you will enjoy them. We finish with the pièce de résistance. Yes, my #1 recommended comic for this week. It is, of course, Tooth and Claw, new #1 from Image. Kurt Busiek, Geordie Belair, high fantasy. What more could you want? This was just a fantastic first issue. I'll agree, there is a lot of exposition in this book. There is a lot to read, there is a lot of information thrown at you, but at least, I hope, it gets it kind of out of the way straight off the bat. So from the next issue we can really just crack on with the story that Kurt Busiek is building here. Not to go into too much detail about the story, but we are in a land, it's made up of magic. The magic is depleting because of an event from the past, and it's up to our anthropomorphic characters to bring together all the magic that they almost have left, to bring back a kind of champion who will open the gate of magic again to fill their world and kind of, I guess, restock them. The artwork in here is stunning, from the kind of panoramic views to the cities to the huge ships to all the character designs. And you know, when you're making anthropomorphic characters, it must be all the more difficult to portray some emotions within the faces, but it does it in bucket loads. Dewey, I forget his first name, just does a great job in portraying all the characters and the range of emotions. The characters that they place in certain roles are sometimes obvious, like the big pompous owl, the buffaloes being the kind of herders, the almost kind of slave-like characters, to the more regal breeds of dogs that they use. It was just a great... It kind of reminded me of... I know this sounds kind of cliched and a bit sappy, but, you know, I could just see myself in an armchair next to a roaring fire, reading this book like it was a childhood story that I was coming back to after many years of missing it. Huge thumbs up from me. Clearly this is on my pull list. I'm sure Kurt Busiek is not going to disappoint with this title. Pick it up, 48 pages, £2.99. It's a no-brainer. And there we go. We've got to the end. Thank you for being here. Thank you for still being here. What a lot of books. Weren't they great? Weren't they bad? Weren't they a bit of a mixture of both? That's the world of comics. Thank you for watching. If this is your first time here, hit the subscribe button. You won't miss out on any more of my videos then. Give it a big thumbs up and let me know down in the comments section down below what you thought of the comic books I picked up. Did you dislike the humans as much as I did, and was it for the same reasons? Did you enjoy Tooth and Claw as much as I did? And give me your reasons down in the comments below as well. Until next week, thank you all for watching. Thank you to all my new subscribers that I've recently had. Much appreciated. I'll see you next week. Bye bye.